collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Charalambous.
Coming up on the programme this week, the President of the European Commission launches a white paper on the future of the European Union.
It is not our perception of reality that really matters, and we cannot adapt reality to our perception. When I say our, the European Union's perception, it is the European Union which will have to adapt to what people actually want.
We'll hear about a month full of varied events at the CVAR.
There is the most beautiful church in a little valley covered with almond blossoms from the almond trees this time of the year, and it's a wonderful Byzantine church with Gothic additions. The loggia is Gothic, and the most beautiful iconography inside. I mean, the Pantocrator in the dome is amazing. The blue colors it has, the strong colors are amazing.
The Association of Professional Women in Europe continues its Incredible Women lecture series.
What it is a female empowerment series which aims to inspire, motivate, connect, and mobilize women and men alike to pursue their dreams and ambitions.
And we meet one of those incredible women who gave up her job to sail around the world.
So we left London end of August 2015, and we sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and we reached Rio about a month later.
This year, Europe is celebrating 60 years because the Treaty of Rome was signed back in March 60 years ago. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker has given a State of the Union speech recently in which he outlined his ideas for the future of Europe. A white paper sets out 5 scenarios, each with a glimpse into the potential state of the Union by 2025. That depends, of course, on the choices that European members are going to make. What are those scenarios? Well, we've got with us the European Commission Representation Head, George Markopouliotis. So where do we start? I mean, why do we need 5 different scenarios, George?
Well, Rosie, yes, as you said, President Juncker went to the European Parliament yesterday, which because he's a firm believer in democracy in Europe. After all, democracy is a European product, in order to present the options that we have in replying to the question, where do we want Europe to go? And when I say where do we want, it's not for a few bureaucrats in Brussels, it's not for presidential or prime ministerial officers in the member states, it's basically for the people of Europe to engage in this debate. Why now? You more or less said it, we're celebrating 60 years. 60 years of Europe with quite remarkable achievements, I should say. Not wanting to bless our beards, as we say in Greek, but we've done a lot. Europe has moved forward a lot. There's travel, there's security, there's economic prosperity. Compared to what it did when I was a little lad, it was extremely complicated, to communicate with other countries, to visit other countries. So all these things, they have been surpassed, and mostly because of Europe. But it is true, and this is where the discussion comes in, the environment has changed from when Europe was more or less conceived and then started operating. And also, let's be very honest, when we talk to people, when we have events here in the EU House, everybody says, but Europe should do this, should do that, Europe should change tack. And the purpose of President Juncker's intervention yesterday is to try and find out where should Europe be going, what is this new tack that Europe should be taking.
But surely if you've got so many members now, there are going to be almost as many suggestions as to what tack one should take.
You're right, but is that bad? I mean, at the end of the day, you cannot carry, as I said, in a democratic way, European peoples in an experiment, because Europe is an experiment, and it's a nice experiment for those who have experienced it, but it also has some difficulties, and it has difficulties because it's alive, because societies, economies, and people, change on a constant basis. And at the end of the day, as I've said before on occasions, we cannot, in a Procrustean way, as we say, you remember from antiquity, the Procrustean way, which was basically, if it was bigger than the size that I have in my mind, I have to chop it off, and if it was smaller, I have to pull it apart. It is not our perception of reality that really matters, and we cannot adapt reality to our perception. When I say our, the European Union's perception, it is the European Union which will have to adapt to what people actually want.
Yes, but you can't have so many different scenarios where surely as a bloc it has to move forward in a somewhat united fashion.
Yes, you're right. On the other hand, these scenarios are not science fiction. These scenarios are discussions which have taken place, discussions which are taking place, and basically they reflect, to a certain extent, political realities in Europe. If I take them one by one, and I think that might be useful for those who are interested to find out what exactly did Juncker propose, the first scenario is we basically go ahead as we are today. We go ahead on the basis of the cooperation that we have, with the advantages and disadvantages that this approach has. We all have followed the discord sometimes that there is in Europe, which in itself it's not necessarily a bad thing, because, as I said, and I will insist on that, Europe is a democracy. There are many voices, and they have to be heard. At the end of the day, we have to be able, however, to decide, and once we have decided on something, these decisions, they have to be implemented. So, one option is we go ahead as we are with the positive elements and the pitfalls that this approach has.
And with the reforms, because he was talking about a positive reform agenda.
Well, the positive reform agenda is basically what we have today. I mean, President Juncker already, in his speech last year about the priorities of Europe, he has said that, he wants to have a positive reform agenda, a positive agenda on the economy, on migration, on research, on technology. He wants to deliver in a positive way on the 10 priorities that he had basically set out when he was vying to become president, when there was a democratic process. You remember, we all know now the German word Spitzenkandidat, the top candidates of the political parties in Europe. The top candidate for the Christian Democrats was President Juncker. Martin Schulz was for the Socialists, etc. Verhofstadt was for the Liberals, and they set out a vision for the next 5 years for the Commission, and they were elected by the European Parliament on that basis. So, that positive agenda of Juncker is what we have now, and this is what we're implementing. However, as I said before, these options, they also... Why are we having this discussion now, if you allow me a little parenthesis? It's not just the fact that some people say, well, let's have a serious discussion about Europe. It's because the environment in which Europe operates is changing. Europe, in the 1900s, represented 1/4 of the world population. 1/4, so 1 every 4 people on the planet was European. Today, 150 years later, I mean by 2060 is the estimation, but I mean roughly 150 years later, we're less than 4%. We will be less than 4% of the world population. So we were 1 in 4 150 years ago. We will be 1 in 25 today. It's not so bad in terms of economic share, because still Europe represents one of the most privileged, one of the most prosperous, one of the most safe blocs in the world. We have around 1/4 of the world GDP. But all this, suggests this dramatic change in which even the largest European country, I mean today it's Germany, probably will be Germany over the next few decades, will not have more than 1% of the world's population.
Well, we touched on the first part of the White Paper and President Juncker's 5 scenarios. Next week on the programme, we'll look in more depth at what the future of Europe may hold.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
I confess that despite all the years I've been in Cyprus, I have never visited Kantara Castle in the occupied north. Well, there's a visit going on there tomorrow, organised by the CVAR. Rita Severis will be taking a group of people to see not just the castle, but also Antiphonitis Church. She joins us now to tell us all about it. Rita, unfortunately, I understand it's full, so
Yes.
you'll have to do another one. But do tell us a little bit about the history of Kantara Castle, because the castles in the north have a huge place in Cypriot history, don't they?
Indeed, because they are from the 18th, from the 17th century, the only visible monuments that we had in Cyprus. Don't forget that at that time there were no excavations. So we didn't have Salamis, we didn't have Paphos, we didn't have Curium. The only things that people could see were the castles on the top of the mountains. Now this is the time for Kantara. This month is the time for Kantara, when the cyclamens are out, when the anemones are out, and it's full of them up there. And Kantara Castle was the third in line of the castles of Cyprus, not as important as St. Hilarion or Buffavento, but still a sort of, I would say, more a military castle, which was abandoned by the Venetians in 1524. They felt that they didn't need it anymore. And unfortunately, that marked its fall, because the villagers from the area started going and collecting stones from the castle, and it started getting destroyed. But there's plenty still to see.
And in what sort of state is it? Has there
It's
been
not
any
in-
restoration?
Not much, no, unfortunately not. But it is in a good state. Villagers still say that on the rock on the left, every now and then they can see the Regina, the queen, pondering over her island, sitting there looking sad and pondering over her island. This is one of the spirits of Cyprus. There is the oubliette in Kantara, where people were thrown in this dungeon to be forgotten. Oubliette, from the French oublier, to forget.
So they just starved to death?
They just starved to death. There are rooms. This is where a lot of the fighting between the imperialists and the royalists took place during the early Lusinian period. And this is where, for the first time in Cyprus, they used the catapult. And it's amazing, because the catapult was used in Cyprus in very, very early years, earlier than most of the places in Europe. And it was, for the first time, at Kantara.
So you're having a visit there tomorrow, but you're also going, as
And-
we said, to Antiphonitis Church.
Yes,
so where is that?
we're going over the mountain towards the sea, and just on top of Aios Ambrosios village, there is the most beautiful church in a little valley, covered with almond blossoms from the almond trees this time of the year. And it's a wonderful Byzantine church with Gothic additions. The loggia is Gothic, and the most beautiful iconography inside. I mean, the Pantocrator in the dome is amazing. The blue colors it has, the strong colors are amazing. This is a church which was desecrated by Eileen Dickman and Van Rijn. They took parts of the frescoes to sell them abroad, and thank goodness some of them were found and brought back by the Church of Cyprus. And there is a wonderful iconography of the tree of Jesse. A beautiful church with a long history, belonging first to a Lusinian casal, a Lusinian estate, and then it was bought by a private person, abetos, and then it belonged to the Kiko monastery, along with the church of Panagia Ipati and Melandrina, which are in the area still, not in very good condition. But Antiphonides was the place where all the villages around used to go on Sundays, where the young girls of Aios Ambrosios would walk on a Sunday afternoon and go and light their candle. It was a magnificent church, still is actually.
So that's the visit that's taking place tomorrow. But although you can't join that one because it's been booked up for a while now, CVAR are doing, I think, monthly trips to places in the north which people may not have visited. So what else have you got coming up, Rita?
Well, on the 8th of April, we have Famagusta. And we go through all the monuments of Famagusta in a different way, giving the sociological and anthropological aspect of it, the history of the people that stayed in there, the people that lived in the monuments, what happened, the episodes that happened in those monuments, and a bit of their history and architecture. It's a lovely tour. It's, I would say, the most favorite tour of all our tours. But then we also go to Apostolos Andreas, we go to Morphou, Soli and Vouni, we do tours in the south, my Lusignan Trail, we go to Paphos, we go up to the mountains. Only last month we did Kalopanaiotis and the Railway Museum. What we try to do is get people to know and love their country. So we try to take people from the south to the north, people from the north to the south, and if possible, mixed. So not only do they get to know their country, they get to know each other. This way, we hope we're promoting peace and reconciliation.
Okay, so where can people find out about these trips and book up, I presume, well in advance?
Yes, we usually advertise them 2 weeks before on our Facebook, or one can call the museum and find out when the next tour is coming up. We definitely do one trip a month. I've known months that I had to do 4 trips every Saturday. Usually we do them on Saturdays, sometimes on Sundays. Depends on where we're going. I try to avoid Sunday because most of the places are shut. But Saturday you have life around, so it's much better.
And the number to call if you want to reserve a place is 22 300 994. But before we leave Rita Severis and the CVAR, it's not just the historical visits that are happening. There's a whole series of events coming up at the CVAR in Old Nicosia itself. So Rita, what's up this month?
Well, you know that every first Friday of the month we have Cans for Kids quiz, and a lot of very faithful followers turn up and antagonize each other about who's more knowledgeable about most things, and they enjoy themselves over a glass of wine and a meal at the CVAR. On Tuesday the 7th, we have music talks. 5 friends, classical music lovers and opera lovers, are inviting guests. Whoever wants can attend in a circle. They'll listen to pieces of music, they'll watch pieces of opera and discuss music and opera. As the classical music lovers are very few in Cyprus, this gives them a chance to exchange information, ideas, comments, criticism, and talk about their favorite subject.
It sounds a little bit like a book club, but for music.
Exactly, this is the idea.
So where can people, I mean, you said anybody
It's
can...
free, anybody can come in. It's on Tuesday, 7th of March at 6 o'clock. And anybody can just walk in and sit, and we'll chat. And then the same principle applies to our monthly lectures of reader painting. And in March we have it on Tuesday the 14th, and this is where we take paintings from the museum, 4, 5, 6, depending, and we talk about what you can see in them, what you can learn from them, how can you understand the painting, what does it tell you, what does it the message it's trying to give, and the message that is hidden in them. So people enjoy it because they learn to see paintings from a different angle. And we do have a monthly lecture. Last month we had Ezra Yin talking about her experiences as a Greek and Turkish journalist for both sides. This month we're having, on Tuesday the 21st of March, Rali Papageorgiou, who covers the Turkish press for the Cyprus News Agency. And she will come and talk about the other, which should be interesting. How do we perceive the other, how we see the other?
And how is the other represented to us by the media?
Exactly. And of course we have the children programs. We have Greek and English programs like Katerina Kornaro revisiting the museum, a Greek one called the Saranda Draghi, which is a presentation by storyteller in Cyprus. But on the 23rd of March, we have a book presentation by the French Institute on a novel called Guy et Rachel by Yangos Antoniadis. And on Wednesday, the 8th of March, Tango Erotico, celebrating International Women's Day in cooperation with the Cyprus Academy of Music. Roman Gomez will be here playing the Pantoneon with Maestro Yannis Hagiloizou at the piano. And first there will be the concert, but then they've invited the Tango Society to come and dance here while they play the Pantoneon and the piano. And then whoever wants can have a seminar or can participate in a seminar or a workshop or even have private lessons. So that's something different, and all in honor of women.
So all of that happening, a very busy month indeed at the CVAR in Old Nicosia. Do contact them, look for them on Facebook or on the website, or call 22 300 994.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
The International Association for the Promotion of Women in Europe is running a series of talks, events that are called Incredible Women, and they continued earlier this week at the CVAR in Old Nicosia. The press officer of AIPFE, as they're known, is Maki Solomou. Maki, tell me about the idea behind this whole series of events. You've already started them, but you've got them running, I think, throughout the year.
That's right. We launched Incredible Women in 2017. We had the first one in January, and today marks the second one with Memnia Theodorou, Sailing from Adversity to Greatness. And what it is a female empowerment series which aims to inspire, motivate, connect, and mobilize women and men alike to pursue their dreams and ambitions.
And how do you find all these women that have a message to give? Because you don't want the same message, do you?
We're always on the watch out for women who excel in their field, and not only. Today's woman, for example, today's speaker, she's a dentist, but she will speak about anything but dentistry. So we always watch out for women who excel through their experiences, their adventures, and they have a message to give us.
And so how do you go about finding these women?
It's all about networking. It's all about being on the watch out when you're out at events, speaking to people. Every single woman in the board of AIPFE is great with connecting people. So when you talk to people, you find out about their story, and if it's intriguing enough and interesting to us, it will be interesting to our audiences as well.
But they must be successful business women?
Not necessarily. It could be people or women who have decided to step out of their comfort zone, their work, to pursue a dream, an ambition.
Can you give us an example?
Well, today's speaker, for example, our next speaker as well, she's a woman who went through cancer and lost her job. When she went back to her job, they told her, "You're fired." And because of her endeavors and attempts, she mobilized enough people in Cyprus, not just civil society, but people high up, like members of parliament and ministers. And she has managed to amend the bill which protects cancer patients in their workforce. So she will be our next speaker.
And what else have you got coming up throughout the year?
We have Elizabeth Sahin Georgiadou, who's a successful entrepreneur, businesswoman, and spends her time in between Holland, the Netherlands, where she has her business, but also spends a considerable amount of time here in Cyprus. And that's all about We Can Reveal until now.
You've got surprises later in the
Yes,
year,
we
though.
do.
I've heard
We
about
do.
some of them.
Yes,
But you're
there
not
are
willing
some
to say.
phenomenal women. So if you keep watching our space on our Facebook and soon our website, you'd be able to hear more. So stay tuned.
So what are you on Facebook?
AIPFE Cyprus, Women of Europe. AIPFE Cyprus.
AIPFE Cyprus on Facebook, and a website to come shortly from the International Association for the Promotion of Women in Europe. We've been talking to their press spokesman, Mahi Solomon. And on Tuesday, as part of that incredible women's series that we've just been hearing about, the speaker was Memnia Theodorou. She was born in Larnaca, which is perhaps why she has a love for the sea. But actually, Memnia, I think you qualified as a dentist, so maybe you better tell your story.
Yeah, that is correct. It has always been my dream to become a dentist. So when I was 18, I gave the exams and I studied dentistry in the University of Thessaloniki, Aristotle University.
And then what happened that you you followed your career as a dentist, but where did the sea bit come in?
Well, I had always been in love with the sea, with any sea sports as such, but then I moved to London and there is no sea around London. So I took a break from sailing and all sorts of sports that include sea for about 8 years, and then something clicked inside me and it was time to get back in the sea.
Did you come back to Cyprus at that point, or were you still based in London?
I was still based in London, but I had just given up my work and my flat, and I just literally left for the oceans.
And when you say for the oceans, you mean what exactly?
So we left London end of August 2015, and we sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and we reached Rio about a month later. This was the only leg of this adventure that I had originally signed up to do, but then I fell in love so much with the sea and the sport that I just carried on signing up for more legs. So then I found myself sailing to Cape Town, then I sailed near Perth in Albany in Australia, then we went round Australia reaching Sydney. We participated in Sydney Hobart race, and then I finally ended my race in Early Beach.
Okay, we're talking here about the Clipper Round the World Yacht Race.
That is correct.
So you've got to be a pretty good sailor to take part in something like that. Tell us about the boat that you were on, because you were part, I think, of Team Great Britain.
That is correct. Well, you don't necessarily need to have a previous sailing experience to participate in this race, because they do train you. To qualify to participate in this race, you have to undergo 4 weeks of intense training. And after you've achieved that, then you can participate.
So what sort of training did they give you? Were you with other people who hadn't done any sailing?
Roughly 40% of the people who sign up to do this don't have previous sailing experience. So everybody goes through the same exactly training program, so everybody knows the same jargon and we can communicate effectively at sea. So you train with your teammates, but also from people from other boats. And yeah, it's very thorough.
And when we say clipper, are we talking here about a tall ship?
Not really, it's a sailing boat. It's a 70-foot yacht. It's a stripped-down racing yacht, has no luxuries whatsoever. It's pretty basic in terms of luxuries, but it's a very sturdy boat to take on the seas.
And what's the idea behind the race? Is it just to get people interested in seafaring and sailing and the sea?
Sir Robin Knox-Johnston, who created this event, was the first man to sail around the world non-stop solo. And his aspiration was to allow a lot of everyday people to achieve something so big that you couldn't possibly do on your own, or you couldn't afford to have a boat on your own to do such an endeavor. So this was his aspiration, and this is why he created this event, to allow people from all walks of life to circumnavigate the earth.
And you talk about cost, because sailing is not a cheap thing to do. So what did you have to put in, as it were, to take part in that Clipper yacht race?
Well, it depends on the amount of legs that you undertake, but for instance, a full circumnavigation could be roughly 50 grand, 50,000 sterling. But a lot of people manage to, gather the money through not petitions, but let's say sponsorships, or they do it for charities, or there are loads of ways that you can do that if you want to.
And what did you do?
I just paid. I just needed to go.
Was it worth it?
Yes, every little bit of it.
And now what?
And now I am based in Cyprus and in London, so I'm back and forth. I still practice dentistry, but I do it in a kind of different way that I did before. I do it my way, a little bit more freely. And you could say I'm still a sailor, but on land, because I move around a lot, but I enjoy doing that. So, yeah, I haven't left my profession, but I combine my profession with other activities that I love, like sailing or trekking or scuba diving.
So you're a part-time dentist now? Have you
Correct.
got your own surgery or what?
No, I do small contracts in England. It's kind of freelancing dentistry that I didn't have the guts to do before, but after taking on this adventure, I think I can take on everything.
And that was Memnia Theodorou, who was speaking at this week's Incredible Women series of talks, hosted by AIPFE Cyprus. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.